Hello friends, my name is Hannah and today we are wrapping up June. I'm sorry if you can hear my washing machine in the background. Let's chat books. So for those of you who were around in May, you will possibly remember that I didn't have a very good reading month in May. Not to do with numbers or stats or things like that, just wasn't really feeling that great about my reading. This month, we have turned a corner. I'm feeling great. I feel like I've had a really good reading month, but here's the thing. I mean, I've read more, but it's not about the numbers. That's not really what does it for me. But when I've gone to look at my, books that I've read, there have been some brilliant books that I've really enjoyed, but it's not massively far and away better than last month. Isn't it funny that sometimes it just goes to show how much our mood and what we bring to the book can affect our experience of it. I think I'm just happier and more settled this month, and therefore I'm feeling better about my reading. But hey, you're not here to act as a pseudo-therapist for me. You're here to find out what I read. So I read 13 books in June. Which is the most I've read in a month this year. But as I said, not really so much about the numbers, but I think the fact that I've read more was because I was enjoying the experience of reading more and I was just feeling like I had more time to read. So that is good. I'm just going to go through in the order that I read them. And apparently I have an emotional support highlighter for today's video that I cannot let go of. So let's go. The first book I read this month was an audiobook, and it was The Curfew by T.M. Logan, narrated by Richard Armitage. I do not read a lot of crime fiction. This is crime fiction. But I saw Jen Campbell, who I'm a big fan of, as you will know if you have been here before. She did a video where she was trying to find a new favourite crime book, and she really liked this, so I thought, well, if Jen likes it, I'm going to give it a go. And it was great. It was the first T.M. Logan book I've ever read, and I will definitely be picking up some more. It basically, the setup is that it's told from the perspective mostly of a father whose teenage son goes out one night. He thinks he comes back, goes and checks on him in the early hours of the morning, sees a body in his son's bed, thinks, oh, great, he's home. But then it transpires that that wasn't his son in his bed. And that's not a spoiler. We know that from early on in the book, that that's not his son. And so there's this feeling throughout it that everyone is panicked and worried because something else has happened that night. Someone has gone missing. But we kind of know more than the parents, but we don't know everything. And it's just brilliantly tense, but also kind of dready. I need to find a better word than that, but it's dready. This was the first book I read this month. I have a terrible memory for plot, hence Hannah lost the plot. So I can't remember tons about this book, but I remember really enjoying it, and I really recommend it if you're after a good crime book. And as I said, it's narrated by the brilliant Richard Armitage, so I also especially recommend the audiobook because it was excellent. It was Pride Month this month, so I was trying to read a lot of queer stuff, not all queer, but a lot of queer stuff. And the first book I finished this month was actually a non-fiction book. This is Gay Bar, Why We Went Out by Jeremy Atherton-Lin. This was kindly lent to me by my friend Helen. And this is an interesting book. This is part memoir, part history of gay bars in both the States and the UK. So it follows Jeremy Atherton-Lin, and he is American but now lives in the UK. And it was so interesting. It kind of like each chapter follows like a different gay bar. So you find like a little bit about the history of the gay bar and kind of like a lot about the queer scene, particularly the male queer scene, through these kind of like potted histories of gay bars. I did find structurally, sometimes it felt like there was much more memoir than history, and sometimes it felt the other way around, and the balance didn't always feel right for me. I think I wanted a bit less memoir and a bit more of a social history of gay bars, but like that's not Jeremy Atherton-Lin's fault, because that's not the book he was writing. So if you know a book that is a history of gay bars, I would be very interested in this. But some of the observations in this were brilliant. If you're looking for some queer nonfiction in your life, I do recommend it. But as I said, it's not, if you're looking for like a straight up nonfiction about gay bars, what they mean and how they are, it's very much, where we go is very much dictated by Jeremy Atherton-Lin's own relationship with that gay bar. So if it's not a gay bar that he went to, you're not going to find out about it. So it is interesting. I did enjoy it, but there are there were a few bits that I felt like dragged a little bit, but he's a really good writer. And some of the writing was really great, and I will definitely check out other stuff he's done. I think he's a journalist by day. But yeah, I really liked that one. Then we had another audiobook. I listened to The Gloaming by Kirsty Logan, and I have read previously her short story collection, Things We Say in the Dark. Now, again, if you've been here a while, you will know that short story collections, not so much for me. So I was hoping that I would enjoy this one more. This is a novel, and I liked it. It's sort of got a lot of, Kirsty Logan is a Scottish author, and it's got a lot of Scottish folklore in it. It's kind of set in this far-flung island with this family, and there's a lot of sort of Selkie, mermaid mythology and folklore woven through this story. For me, I think the pacing felt a little bit off. I kind of liked the middle section, and then the first third and the last third kind of, I wasn't always sure what the book was about, but I do think she's got a great writer, and she's got a great writer. I think I meant to say she's got a great writing style. She does have a great writing style. And I did like parts of it. I enjoyed the writing of it. I think this was maybe her debut novel. And I have her latest one on my shelf downstairs. So I think I'm going to try and get to that soon, because there were lots of parts of this that I liked, but I found the overall arc and the pacing of it was kind of not super satisfying. But I think if you like women loving women, sapphic storylines, kind of family dramas, quite literary, but with a real folkloric bent, then this may well be worth you checking out. The next book I read was not queer, but I have been slowly making my way through the Wheel of Time series, and I read, what even number is this? Can we talk for a second? I mean, this is the TV version cover anyway, which I hate, but like, they make the overall series title massive, and then the actual title of the book and the book number tiny. It's so annoying. But this was The Path of Daggers. It is book 8 in the Wheel of Time series, so I think I am officially halfway through. I think there's 16. Or they're 14. Maybe I'm over halfway through. Let me see. There are 14, so I'm over halfway through. Here's the thing. I don't read tons of fantasy, but I had an urge about a year ago that I wanted to read a big epic fantasy series. And I don't really like romance, so that kind of took a lot of more contemporary fantasy series like out of the equation for me, a lot of like the biggies, because I'm like, not for me. So I started reading this, and they are so far removed from what I normally read, and he does so much stuff that would normally like absolutely boil my piss and make me not want to read a book. This man just cannot write women. He can't write women. I mean, I'm not convinced he's very good at writing men either, but all the female characters in here are a little bit caricatured and annoying. But I find the series so compulsive, and I really enjoy giving myself a moment every couple of months in my reading where I just read something that is utterly unlike anything I've read. I wonder if reading this, or finishing reading this, helped with my kind of getting out of my bit of like a mood slump with reading, because it gave me like a big reset, because like I said, not like anything I normally read, but gave me a good moment to be like, okay, now for something completely different. But I liked it. I always enjoy them when I'm reading them. They are big, chunky boys, and as I said, the relationships in these, it's not a romance book, but like Robert Jordan, and I even like massive fans of Robert Jordan, I've heard like admit like he's not great at writing romances, but I find the world really interesting, and I just, because I'm Hannah Lost the Plot and I'm not good with plot, in my own writing as well, I find plot really difficult, and so I'm always in awe of writers like this who just have these like mega epic visions for like plot, and I'm always just kind of reading it being like, I can't believe this came out of one person's head in the like detail and nuance of like action that it did. So I had a nice time with it. If you enjoy fantasy, I'm sure you've probably already come across this and made a decision either way of whether or not it's for you, but I'm continuing to have a lovely time with it. That was the fourth book I read. The fifth book was another queer book, and I listened to it on audio. It was On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, and Ocean read it himself. I liked this one. Ocean Vuong is a poet. It's the first, I haven't read their poetry before, but I went into this knowing that they're a poet, and I think even though this is a novel, it was going to be very poetic, and it was, and I really liked listening to the audio, although the Ocean's narration style is quite breathy and, a bit, it took me a while to warm up to it. At first I was like, because, like, it's so subjective, narration style, but I wasn't loving it at first, by the end of it, I think the narration kind of really worked. But this is sort of told as a letter to it's the narrator, who I think this is very heavily autobiographical, I think, but it's a letter to his mother, but his mother can't read English, and so it's a letter that he's writing knowing that it's not going to be read. And I really, when I had the time to really sit and listen to it for like an hour and a half, I would get really swept up in the emotion of it, and I thought it was beautiful. I mean, it's a lot about, trauma and generational trauma and race. So sort of about this Asian experience moving to America and being second generation migrants and all that stuff. And it was really, really good, and about being queer as well. But sometimes when I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm only listening to it for like 15-20 minutes because I'm like listening while I'm making dinner or something. And I don't think that was the right way to listen to this book, because I found it it was often quite hard for me to situate myself in the plot, because it's got a very loose narrative, and so sometimes I would be like really unsure about what was going on. But again, that might be user error in terms of the book. But I do think I might have enjoyed it more if I had not listened to it. Yeah, if I had read it in a hard copy rather than on audio. But beautiful, beautiful writing, and I really liked the writing, and I definitely want to get to his poetry at some point. The next book I'm not going to talk about in too much detail because I have a vlog up on my channel where I read it, and that is Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jared Hosein. This is a book that I read for the Read the World challenge on Storygraph. Kevin Jared Hosein is a Trinidadian author, and I read this for Trinidad and Tobago. So this is literary. I think it's literary. It's like a literary thriller, but more on the literary side than the thriller side. It is set in the 1940s in Trinidad, and follows sort of two families on the island. One family are very well off, and the other family are kind of at the bottom of the social pecking order, and the father of that family works for the sort of male head of the fancy family. My words are not good today, apologies. This is what happens when you record a video like at the end of a busy working week. Yeah, so it looks at class and race, and I was really interested to read about the kind of like those settings in a country, what do you want to say, Hannah? I was really interested to read about those kind of topics and themes from the perspective of a culture and a country that I'm not very familiar with. I don't know a lot about, I don't think I know much about the Caribbean in general, but I definitely know a lot more about like Jamaica, for example, than I do about Trinidad and Tobago. So it was really interesting to see the kind of nuances play there. I think the character work in this was brilliant, and I had a knot in my stomach for like the last bit of this book. It made me cry, it made me very sad, but in and amongst all of that, there is a mystery and a crime and a bit of thriller, but it's not a straight up thriller, and I say that in the vlog, like it's definitely like a literary take on crime, but I thought it was very good, and I'm very interested in reading anything else that Kevin Jared Hosein puts out. I think he's got another couple of books, so there's that. Then I read the ebook of Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. This book, there was nothing wrong with this book, but I didn't like it. And the reason I didn't like it is because it is a genre that I know full well I don't enjoy, and yet I persist. Part of the reason I picked it up was because it was one of the books that I wanted to read for Pride Month. It's a queer book, and I'm part of a queer book club, and many members of my book club absolutely fucking love this book. And I think if you like YA fantasy, this may well be the book for you. I have come to realise I do not like YA fantasy. It isn't my genre. And that's kind of all I'm going to say about this. I thought the world was really interesting. I thought Hannah Kane was a good writer. There's something about YA fantasy that just straight up doesn't do it for me. And I'm sorry, but if it does it for you, check this out. The next book I read, I'm not going to talk about in tons of detail because it's going to be appearing in a vlog coming up on my channel in the next couple of weeks. So the theme of this vlog is convoluted to explain. But essentially, I'm doing the, on Storygraph, they have a reading challenge for We Didn't Start the Fire, the Billy Joel song, where all of the things in the song relate to a different reading prompt. And I decided I was going to try and do a reading vlog where I ticked off 15 of those prompts in one video. So I was looking for books on my shelf that might hit multiple of the prompts that I hadn't already covered. And I was very pleased that this book was potentially going to hit a lot of them, because I was really excited to get to this book, and it was Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang. You probably don't need me to introduce this book to you. It is absolutely everywhere. I have not read any of her work before. I know Babel Babel is beloved, and it is now sat on my shelf. My friend has lent it to me to read, so I'm hoping to get to that soon. This is a book about two friends who are both writers, and one of them is incredibly successful, like lauded as this brilliant fresh new voice in literature, and she is an Asian American woman. And the other friend is a white woman whose career is not so hot. But they went to university together, and they kind of have continued to sort of move in the same circles. And the successful writer dies. Not a spoiler, that happens in the first chapter. But she'd just finished a manuscript that nobody knew she was working on. And her friend is there when she dies. She's in her apartment, and she knows that the manuscript is there. And she steals it again. None of this is a spoiler. This is like the setup for the book. So she steals this manuscript and she passes it off as her own. And this is the most like page-turnery, like literary thriller. Like literary in the sense that it's both literary but also about writing, that I've ever read. It is getting all the rave reviews from absolutely everywhere, and it is completely well deserved. And honestly, I don't think I've got anything that I can add to like add anything new to the discussion that is already out there. This is about who gets to tell the stories that need to be told in society. It's about race, it's about class, it's about how we talk ourselves into and out of things. It is just utterly compelling and compulsive, and I just absolutely ate it up. So that was book number 8. I then read Rubyfruit Jungle by Rita Mae Brown, which was, I have not written down who narrated it. I will insert it here because the narrator was very, very good. This is a classic in the sort of Western queer canon. It's sort of lauded as being one of the first openly and unapologetically lesbian books published in the West, maybe the States, but it follows a young girl whose name I can't remember, and it's sort of a coming of age story, and it follows her from her sort of pre-teens up into sort of, I think it goes up to her like mid to late 20s. And I think if you are a fan of a coming of age tale, this is a really good one. I really liked the way that, even though it was written in quite an episodic way, and we cover, like, she moves around a lot, so there's like a period where we're in Florida, there's a period where we're in New York, that felt quite seamless, and I felt like the characters' evolution and progression was really smoothly done, so that when we moved between points in her life, she still felt like the same person, but like she had evolved. And I know that sounds like it should be like writing, but that's often not how I experience coming of age books, and that sometimes it feels like the character sort of has to, like, for the sake of the plot, you know what I mean? But this didn't feel like that. But you follow her sort of coming to terms with her attraction to women, some of the relationships that she has. She has this ambition that she wants to be a film director, and at the time that this was written, that was not really something that women did. So in lots of ways, she was a real trailblazer. And yeah, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Cool. Then I read another book that will be featuring in another vlog that I have coming up. So again, I won't talk too much about it, but that vlog is reading 3 titles that I'm excited about that haven't come out yet. So I had 3 titles on NetGalley that are coming out imminently. Like literally, I think one of them is already out, and one of them will be out by the time you're watching this, and the other 2 are out later on this week, I think. So I wanted to get to those before they were out. And the first one was a book that I was so excited about, and I really liked it. It was Open Throat by Henry Hoke. Now, all I had been aware of about this book was that it was told from the perspective of a hungry gay mountain lion. And I almost just want to I almost don't want to say any more about it. I mean, the vlog will be incoming in the next couple of weeks, so you can get my in-depth thoughts there. But this is very experimental, as you'd expect from that sort of byline. But I think I don't always do well with narratives that are told from the perspective of animals, because I just can't always suspend my disbelief that far. But I think it was really, really well done. So the mountain lion is sort of roaming around the outskirts of California, at the outskirts of LA. And so we hear snatches of his understanding of humans, and that's a great way of kind of presenting us back to ourselves, right? But it's also about displacement and environment, and the getting steadily more devastating impacts of climate refugees and climate migration. But it's also about sort of loneliness and identity, and trying to work out who we are in society, and working out where we fit, and trying to find our people. And just watch the vlog when it comes out if you want to know more. But I liked it. I did like it. So the next book I read was an audiobook, and it was Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Machado. And I listened to the audio of In the Dream House by the same author last year, which is a sort of memoir about her experience in a queer relationship, but her experience of abuse in a queer relationship, which is a topic that isn't really talked about very often. And I absolutely just thought that book was incredible. It was one of my favourite books of the year. And so I gave this book a go, even though it's a short story collection. And I am fast realising that short stories right after YA fantasy are just things that I think I should like, but don't like, and should stop forcing myself to read. But I thought for a minute that this was going to be the thing that was going to change my mind, because I really liked the first story in this collection. And then the rest of it, there was a story in the middle that was really long, like really long, like I think more like a novella. And so like I'd kind of been like, I decided I wasn't like that into it, but it was partly Borrow Box's fault, or was it Scribd? Because they hadn't broken the chapters up accurately. So I kept thinking that, oh, this story's only got a few minutes left, I'll keep listening. But then it kept rolling into the next chapter and the next chapter, which is not the author's fault at all, but was very frustrating because I just wanted that story to be over because I just wasn't into it. So like, warnings for like one massive story in the middle of that. I was interested in some of the themes that these stories could throw up. It's not the right format for me, and I didn't get on with the narration style of it either. It was quite... I can't think of a polite or diplomatic word for it, so let's just say it wasn't for me. It wasn't my style. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. But I think I will continue to persevere with anything she writes, because I just loved that memoir so much. And then the next book I read was another one that I read for the vlog where I'm reading upcoming releases, and this was Carla by Colin Walsh. Now again, I'm not going to talk too much about it. This is a sort of literary crime. Oh God, I was having a month of literary crime. This is a literary crime fiction set in Ireland. And so it is about the disappearance of a girl called Carla. And she disappeared about 20, no, not quite 20 years ago, maybe like 15 years ago. And we're following in the present day 3 of her friends from her friendship group who have all been drawn back together to their hometown for various reasons. And it's exploring how the reverberations of that disappearance are still, like, there's so much that's still unresolved. She was never found. No one ever knew what happened to her. And something has happened in the present day that is throwing all of this back up. And I liked it. I liked it enough to be interested in reading other things that Colin Walsh has written. There were a few bits about the book that didn't work for me, but you can wait and watch the vlog to find out what they were. But yeah, I liked it. I didn't love it. And then the final book that I listened to this month was an essay collection by Jill Gutowitz called Girls Can Kiss Now, and I absolutely loved this. It's, if you're a fan of like queer stuff and pop culture, this is the non-fiction for you. So Jill basically is it's part memoir and part sort of like literary criticism of popular culture, and a kind of like an examination of it, but very much looking at queer pop culture, or pop culture that has been queered, or that has particular relevance to the queer community. And her writing style is hilarious. I really liked it as an essay collection because she wrote it as an essay collection. So, you know, sometimes in collections it's like pulls together parts of kind of disparate writings. So sometimes it can feel like a little disjointed or sometimes a little bit repetitive. These were written to be part of a collection, and I really enjoyed it. I hadn't read any of her writing before, and I didn't follow her on social media, though I think a lot of people do follow her on Twitter. But I really liked it, and I thoroughly recommend it. It's very funny, and there is one essay that's got really heavy content in it, so do check your content warnings if you think you need to do that to keep yourself safe and happy. So that was the last book I read this month, and that's everything that I've read this month. So it's weird talking about it to you now, because I don't really know why I feel like I had such a good reading month, because it's not like I read 10 books that were absolute favourites. I just seemed to be having a good time with my reading. I read more on audio and on my e-reader than I did. Like, I only read 4 physical books this month, and I'm just surprised by my own feelings about my own reading. But I think that's why sometimes having a channel like this and like chatting through my reading, you realize things, because I think if before I'd sat down to actually think about my reading this month, I would have assumed that I'd had a good reading month because I'd read lots of books that I really loved. Now, I read lots of books that I liked, but I probably only loved 2 of them. But yet, here I am, feeling wonderful and positive about my reading. So, like, I'm not gonna interrogate the feelings anymore. I'm just gonna be happy that I feel good about my reading. So, how's your reading been in June? We're halfway through the year. Why don't you let me know in the comments down below what you read this month that was great, how you feel about your reading in general. Do you sometimes just feel like you're having a good reading time, even if you're not actually enjoying the books that you're reading much more than anything else? Maybe I'm just in a good mood this month. It's nearly the summer holidays, maybe that's what it is. But yeah, let me know what you've been reading, and if you've enjoyed this video and you want to stick around for those 2 vlogs that I mentioned that will be coming up later this month, then do like and subscribe. It would be lovely to have you around. You can also follow me on Instagram for more kind of regular updates, and I do quick little reviews of everything I read over on there as well. So thanks very much for hanging out with me, and I will see you again soon. Bye.